Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Barbara Dalle Pezze, who is a global leadership coach. Barbara, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. I'm very happy and honored to be here. Thank you.
And so when you say global leadership coach, your bio talks about global experience living and working in Hong Kong, China, Australia, Singapore, Canada, the US, and you're currently calling in from Italy. So you most definitely are global. So give us a little bit of background on yourself and then what led you to focus on global leadership coaching.
Well, as you have just mentioned, indeed, I have lived globally for the past 20 years, and I've experienced life in all those countries that you have mentioned, and I worked there, and I had the privilege of being with people in those places, and I have been working with organizations as a coach, as a facilitator. I've been teaching at the universities, and I had really the incredible opportunity to interact with so many different cultures and in a very intimate way, I would like to say. And so the passion of being able to give my contribution of what is global leadership actually came out of that experience because I am originally from Italy and therefore from the Western side of the world. And so spending so many years of my life in the Asia Pacific region, first of all, it's been such an incredible and enriching experience. And I've learned so much about myself, about the world, really. And so I wanted to contribute and give back everything that I have learned. And I thought that the means to do that was actually through coaching and leadership consulting. So that's the basic experience.
Yeah. So do you find when you work with clients, is it more like you are working with them in different international locations to help them thrive? Or is it more you're working with an entrepreneur in, let's say, the United States who wants to expand globally, and then you're helping them understand culture or ways to achieve that?
Actually, I have been in the different places and I've worked with the organizations and the top executives in their different countries. So I would say that I work directly in the cultural zone. And because the places I've lived in, they are very much multicultural and they are a melting pot of different cultures. So the challenges that these leaders and the teams I've been working with in the organizations have a lot to do with differences in terms of really culture and how people think and how they behave and how do you integrate these differences so that the organizations thrive, so that the teams actually can run smoothly and can be effective in what they do. So I would say that being in the actual place where the organizations are, was the starting point. And then within that organization, then you do the cultural diversity mediation, if you want to say. Did I answer your question?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it's really interesting to me because when I did my graduate work, of course, there's maybe one course or, a few chapters in a course on international marketing. My MBA was in marketing. And so I remember specific examples of, when you go to this culture, you want to do things this way. And one of the most common ones that you think about is, in the Orient or Japan, when you hand someone your business card, or if they hand you their business card, you don't, like in America, we take it and put it in our back pocket and say thanks and move on. And that would be a big offense to someone in Japan. You want to hold it with two fingers and stare at it and read it and turn it over and admire it. And that's just part of their culture. And I remember thinking, boy, wouldn't it be really powerful if some global consultant knew all of the cultural business norms and put this in like an app And so here's this, salesperson flying over to wherever, and they're like, okay, I need to prep for my meetings. So let's see here, country of origin, I'm heading here. What are some things to remember? And I just think it would be really interesting. So what are some of the examples like that you work with your clients on?
Well, you were talking, actually, you do need a lot of what I call emotional agility when you are in contexts where there are so many different cultures, because as you just mentioned, what comes natural within your culture when you are, for example, I worked a lot in China, and when I was in Beijing, I needed to pay attention so much. The way I was actually interacting, because in China, although some might perceive some Chinese people to be very direct and very aggressive, at the same time, there is a level of privacy, and they are very shy and reserved. And so the way you interact, for example, with the authority or with the leaders, and the way you interact with team members there you need to be very attentive, because they have, for example, a great respect for authority. And even if they are at the top level of the organization, you need to be very careful in the way you address their CEO, let's say, and the different CEOs of different subsidiary companies that I was working with in this case, because you need to be very careful at understanding the nuances that are going on within the team in order not to disrupt too much what is the cultural element of the team, right? So, for example, let me give you an example. If I am, as I was dealing with this team, and we were building leadership capabilities within this team that was managing more than 50,000 people in China, I needed to, and 50% of the team members, they were female, and 50% they were male. I needed to be very careful in the way I was presenting the leadership approach, because from my perspective, a leader might need to be more aggressive and more assertive. But in some context in China, assertiveness is not considered something that you want to display so openly, right? And so my experience within that cultural context was to be really, really attentive of what were my element of my upbringing and my Western culture, even in terms of leadership, versus what was appropriate, as much as I could understand and offer within their cultural context. So definitely to work in this complex systems, I would say, both in terms of cultural diversity and also in terms of generational diversity, I would say. So different ages being together, you do need to develop this emotional agility and also a cognitive agility, because you need to constantly change and adapt and paying attention to nuances and pay attention to tiny little signs that you might notice that you are not familiar with, just simply because they are from a different culture. So for me, working in those faraway countries, far away from Italy and from the Western world, from Europe in my case, was an amazing emotional gym, as I used to say, because they really stretched me to the limit of my ability to expand my emotional capacity and capability. So that was absolutely a great school for what I think today is needed in terms of ability. So this emotional agility and this attentiveness to diversity.
Yeah, and when you were mentioning that, I can just envision if you did not treat that high-ranking CEO, as an example, correctly, and then you're interacting with them in front of or in the audience of the rest of the team. Now, when you go to work with the team, they might not trust your advice as much because they just noticed some things about how you were not aware of their culture. And so talk a little bit about how to develop that trust and why that's so important to get off on the right foot when working with an international team.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. You need that is something that might happen, and to develop that trust, what is absolutely important is to begin to consider individually each element of the team, for example, and to start to set boundaries with them, showing that you are reliable and that they can, what you say and what you stand for is actually what you're going to do. So you are reliable, you are accountable, and that you understand where they come from, and that it doesn't happen what you just mentioned, right? That you know what are the elements that constitute their culture, and you respect those elements, and actually you honor them, because I was always operating in their system, because I was the one visiting them and working in their organizations. And so I felt strongly that I was a guest, and I needed to respect what was their life there and their habits. And I was the one that needed to make the extra effort to understand and integrate what I wanted to support them with. So my learnings and my expertise in terms of leadership, and adapt it to the culture I was a guest in. So that was what they needed to see. And I've always had a great display of trust towards me. Also, because when I needed and wanted to challenge the leadership, I have done it, and I have done it in a way that was done together, right? It was never confrontational. It was just a showing and of some elements that I was noticing, and then asking for their feedback, and asking to be part of the conversation and the growth. And that has always worked powerfully, because that means that you respect the differences, right? Which is very important, because I might not agree with what I see, but I do need to see what is different, and I do need to agree to interact with it.
Yes, exactly. And it's all on just kind of perceptions and beginning with the end in mind, like how Stephen Covey would teach in his writings is, where do you want to be, and how do you want this engagement to end? So if you want it to end in success, what do you need to do before that? And before that, and many times it is those first impressions. So that's such a big point you bring up. So talk a little bit about your new book that you have out. I understand it's called The Unexpected Gift.
Yes, The Unexpected Gift. Thank you for mentioning the book. It is a new book. It just came out in February, and it is a memoir of my 15 years in the Asia Pacific region. It is a little bit different than, it is not a how-to book, and at the same time, it is a story of a woman that is living in Asia and is going through divorce and has to rebuild herself and her career and her identity completely in a foreign country, and building the different dimension of the life of a person. So it is a very powerful, I would say, story, because it has an element of self-development, interacting with diversity and cultural diversity, and how do you build and trust a situation that is challenging you powerfully. So I consider it to be my foundation of leadership, because it helped me develop the human qualities of leadership: resilience, the ability to trust, the ability to believe in opportunities and possibilities. So I am actually very proud of this book. It took a while to write it, but eventually it's out, and the feedback are very good. And I decided to write it because when I was going through those challenges, I couldn't find a book that would help me and would speak to me from the future, so to speak, telling me that everything will be fine and you will make it and you will build what you want to build. And so I decided, you know what, this is an experience that it is very tough and it is challenging me to the core. And I want to write it down so that in the future, if somebody will look for an answer, or at least from a view from the future on what's going on in their life, they can find in my book a hand. And so that's why I wrote it. And that's why I look forward to for people to know that it is there. And for those that will need it, I hope the book will find them.
Excellent. Well, Barbara, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really wonderful talking with you. If someone was interested in reaching out and connecting with you on your book and or global leadership coaching, what's the best way they can connect with you?
I think that they can find me on my website, which is my name, www.barbaradallepezze.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, so they can connect with me there too.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure to have a direct link right in the show notes for your website. And I thank you once again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. Thank you very much. It was an honor to be here.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.